Hello, everyone. I'm Nathaniel Kidd, director of Whatcom Love INC, and I've got on the phone here Heidi Olson, who is our call center director. And we want to share with you today five particular areas of need that we've learned about in the community through our work in the call center, and also how you can help, how you can be engaged in these.
Yeah, as we approach these five areas of need, of course, the list continues to grow, but these are some standout needs that have come into the call center uh, fairly regularly over the last couple of weeks.
So the first thing we want to draw attention to is a question of food resources. Um, I speak regularly with pastors in the network, and I hear a lot of people scrambling to um, create networks in their congregations for people who are looking for food or who are looking for grocery delivery that is safe, um, people who might be isolated. And the number one thing that I've observed is kind of a mismatch between what's perceived in the church and congregations and what seems to be available in the community. So, I mean, the first thing that we really want to point out is that, thanks to many community heroes, there are lots of organizations that are working on this. Food resources are really plentiful in Whatcom County. We've got grocery stores and 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 restaurants on the one hand, on the commercial side, that are upping their game in terms of figuring out how to do delivery, takeout, and curbside pickup. And then on the other side, the network of food resources has worked hard to stay flexible and respond to this. So there's lots of stuff out there. In addition, you have groups like the Bellingham Community Helpers group that are doing delivery. And so there's just a great network of things. And even though there might be a reason that a church would still want to manage things with their congregation, it's good to be aware of those resources and to be plugged into that. I mean, Heidi, have you received a lot of calls in the call center regarding food questions?
I actually have, even with the myriad of resources available, and they're fairly publicized. Um, People are looking for additional food sources. And so just walking through the list, I think that people are just maybe a little bit hyper focused. So they're not realizing, even with everything out there, that it's actually really out there. And once we bring that to their attention, they are very thankful that there's lots of options.
Great. Well, that's good to know. And I mean, yeah, what we're generally recommending, again, there might be a reason that a church would want to do something in terms of building the network within their congregation, but without another reason, we say it's your best strategy is going to be to support and partner with groups that are already doing this, and to refer into the networks of things that are being created by the community. And really, the role that the church has here is to find these people who aren't finding the resources for themselves and to help them get connected with things that are out there. There is lots of need here. The church can be primarily, with respect to food resources, a connector to things out in the community. Is there anything you'd want to add to that, Heidi?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the church congregations are focusing on maybe isolated individuals, people with disabilities, elderly, and all the resources through, including the community helpers group, are able to deal with deliveries to special those with special needs as well, and those that may be isolated. So I agree with you that partnering up with the existing, because there's so many,
Mm-hmm.
is a great idea and a great way to connect.
Great. So another thing that you've brought up to our attention is that there's just been a huge number of people that are looking for gas vouchers, which was kind of puzzling for us for a while. Our hypotheses, I mean, people who need gas vouchers need them to get around, and to do the essential things that people need to do. The bus doesn't cut it for everybody, even though there's free bus right now. And then it seems like because this has been considered a non-essential thing, a lot of the places that people have gone in the past have shut down, and even we're having a hard time finding places to help people connect with the resource that they need in this area. Is there anything you'd want to add to that from your observation?
Yeah, in addition to the observation of the need existed before this, and now the resources are quite short, some of the people that have called in, maybe half or more, have been people that have existing health conditions. So it's not something that's in their best interest to, you're going to go on a public bus versus take your own vehicle. They feel much safer because of the extremity of their conditions that exist already. And I agree with that, of course.
Yeah. So, I mean, the good news here is that we do have some churches that have helped in the past with gas vouchers, and new churches that are looking at this.
Yes.
Um, but the problem is church offices are currently closed, and it's not really clear how do you, if even if we had gas vouchers, how do we get them connected with the people who need them? Um, and so I think this would be a relatively easy one, and we can kind of crowdsource this idea. Where can we create a drop point or a connection point where people can, who we've vetted, we've done the work on both sides of finding the resource and finding the people who need the resource, and we just need to bring them together in a way that's safe and sanitary, and accessible to both parties. Is that about where you understand the need, Heidi?
Yes. Yes. Great input in wanting to tackle this gap. Just not feeling completely safe in where to or how to go about it. I think in a best case situation, if there was a way to partner with a actual gas state, but if that were not to be the case, just having some kind of mutual point of drop off and pick up would be wonderful.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe even a few gas stations, positioned through the county would be an ideal situation if we had those
Yeah,
connections.
that would be wonderful. Yeah.
Great. Well, maybe we can work that out through the network. Um,
Yes.
Next thing is, this is kind of a surprising one. Furniture. We get a lot of furniture calls just because we've had a direct connecting furniture program in the past. Right now, we're doing it through Habitat for Humanity. But there are still people that need furniture. And there's still people looking to give furniture away. It's not urgent for most of us who have a house full of stuff. We can wait to replace something until after this is over. But Heidi, can you describe like some of the situations that you're encountering where this becomes an emergency need?
Yeah. Actually, I think all the people that have called to get furniture are people that are just getting into housing,
Mm,
and so they have no furniture.
mm,
Um, and so normally we would set them up with a voucher to Habitat, but Habitat is not open. So I am not able to do that at this time. And these are families that have gotten into housing but don't have the funds to purchase furniture. So it's a double edged sword on that respect, where they can't afford to get furniture and there's limited options to get the furniture right now.
right. Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, what even are the what even are the options at this point?
Yes. Yeah. It's not something that I would assume that we're going to have quick answers for this particular gap, but these luckily these people are in housing, but of course with no furniture that means they're sleeping on the floor
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
and etc. So
Right. Well, it is encouraging to hear that, like, even in the midst of this, people are getting off the street and into housing. That
yeah.
those wheels are turning. Um, but then, what do you do? I mean, this is actually we've talked about this in the past. Like there is an ongoing need of like we get people into housing, but that's as far as you go. And for people who've been on the streets for a while, you don't have anything when you get into a house, and you don't have any resources to get anything when you get into a house.
Yep.
So there is a significant gap there in normal times, and now with the crisis, with everything shut down, it's even more poignant. Um, so I don't know. One of the things we've talked about too is like, if you have a church group or something, can you walk with these people? Maybe provide a little bit of money so that you can buy something from the places that are open, even though that's going to be a little bit more expensive in the time being, and maybe like just you can take pictures of the stuff that you can give away once it's safe to kind of move around. I don't know. It would take some creative work. But it's definitely something that's beyond anything that exists right now. It would take a little bit of creative grassroots action to get some motion for people in these situations.
Yeah, I agree. I did have one person offer that maybe could load up the stuff that they want to get rid of and just bring it to the location of the other party that needed it, but not actually bring it inside. Like, hey, we'll bring it from our yard to your yard, and then at least you have it. You can bring it into the house yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that's an option. Just people have a little bit of fear with going on Craigslist or OfferUp right now. So I think handling it within church partnerships is great.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and it might be a thing too, where one follow-up step might be we can get in touch with an official somewhere and say, this isn't usually an emergency need, but there are some limited circumstance where it does become very urgent, and how can we facilitate this in the safest and most sanitary way possible? It's a question worth asking, and it's one we
Yep.
don't currently have an answer to.
Yep.
So there we go. Not essential for most of us, but very needful for those who have none. The next thing is questions regarding the rent moratorium and I guess general bills. Can you talk about the kinds of calls you've gotten to that end?
Yeah, a couple of interesting, again, there are quite a few options now available. We're with moratoriums on rent and mortgage for, I think, most of Washington State, if not all. Um, and but some of these situations are people in a unique circumstance where you have a RV and you're renting the lot that it's on. Um, I have not found answers if it applies across the board to everyone paying rent. So that's um, an interesting gap that I need to get some black and white answers on, I guess. But a couple specifically for that, and then bills beyond the regular power bill, beyond what the Opportunity Council has covered, maybe through a grant or other assistance. Um, I know most companies are being very lenient on that too. So most of these calls can be helped with reassurance, but these people are not going to be able to pay their bills in a month or two either. So they're worried.
Yeah, right, right. So, I mean, mostly we have questions here. How far do the protections go, and how do we support people who are still vulnerable in the midst of this? And again, we don't really have answers. It's pretty clear the best practices here are directly for people who have bills, for them to call up the people who they need to pay the bills to and explain their situation and work out an agreement there. But from our end, as people who are supporting people in that situation, there's encouragement, there's advocacy, there's a little bit of research that we can do that can support people who are in that situation. Because, like, particularly if you got 4 or 5 of these, it becomes very overwhelming, and you lose the ability. You go into panic mode. Um, there's a big need there. Yeah. Sorry, you were going to add something?
No, I was agreeing with, yeah, I agree. You get too many and then everybody's overwhelmed.
Right, right. So the last thing, this actually comes from pastors that I've been in contact with, who have people in their congregation who have some kind of severe mental health issues or addiction, or a history of these, and for whom these people in their congregation um, are mitigating their symptoms. And an essential part of their self-care is being in community and being in spiritual community. And these pastors, knowing that about these individuals, have taken extra steps to be in touch and be connected with these people, but have witnessed as a result of what's happening, with social distancing, as these people move into isolation, that their situation has been rapidly deteriorating. We're all impacted by kind of social distancing, and it's more than an inconvenience. There is a health dimension and a wellness dimension to being isolated,
Mhm.
and but for certain people, they're even more vulnerable. It's even more difficult to take in. And I've heard the question raised by several people: how do we engage with this? There's a feeling of almost helplessness and powerlessness watching this happen to people that we care about, and not knowing what to do, because even if that pastor is very intentional, investing a lot of time and energy into that one relationship, what was supporting that person was the whole life of the community, the life of the body. And how do you do that when you can't gather and kind of spread that out? um, and again, like, no answers here. I don't know if Heidi, have you engaged with any of this in a call center, or come across any resources?
Um, uh, I think the Opportunity Council has been putting together some additional resources because obviously they're getting some calls as well. Um, we just got an email today. I haven't done a lot of research on that particular, what they've sent out. But in addition, um, I have some, this mental health and wellness uh, is very important for everybody, but especially those that are in and impacted even through, had a couple of cases with domestic violence, and the community in general may have seen the number increases that have been mentioned through the media. And it's very real for these people that are in these situations too. And we've been contacted here at Love Inc. with a couple of the situations as well. And um, they are hard. They're very hard.
Yeah.
So, and another sense of loss in that these are people that are victims that are isolated and scared.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So again, it's not an area where we have questions. There are some things we know. There are many things we don't know,
Mhm.
and we're just kind of seeking to work together, build new connections, develop new strategies in this time. And yeah, it's going to take everybody working together to make this work. So we wanted to share, beyond that, just kind of what are some of the things um, that that we can do as a community to help. I mean, a big thing, just on a basic level, is just being connected with your neighbor. Like, you're not going to bump into them these days. Most likely, it takes some intentionality. It takes some reaching out, um, and finding what is your avenue. Who are you connecting with, and how are you connecting with your community, as two major questions. What, Heidi, do you have any other kind of like basic practices that you're encouraging people towards?
Yeah, I think even as we get outdoors, maybe for a walk, making sure we're doing the social distancing. I felt even within my immediate community that neighbors that I hadn't even seen or known before are saying hello from their decks or from their yard or
Mm,
whatnot, and it brings some um, joy to your day because people are reaching out. I really think that if you can get outside, even for a small walk, it's important. And um, I think that making sure to make the time to connect with a neighbor via telephone or whatnot is also a really good way to stay connected and stay healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I've found too that a little pro tip here, after doing like 8 hours of Zoom calls a day for a few days in a row, right, as we're all getting into this new thing, just like, wow, not everything has to be a Zoom call. Some things can actually happen on a telephone, and if I do it on the telephone, I can take it for a walk, and
Yep.
just changing up my routine using a little trick like that, that goes a long way. And then when I do it, I'm also pushing somebody else to do it because it's needful for me. It turns out it's also needful for someone else. On a systemic level, I mean, we're still working in terms of our volunteer system at engaging more opportunities, um, cultivating ways in which people can serve, uh, particularly pertinent to the things that we've been talking about. We're looking for people to join our research team. Um, you know, when we have these sorts of things, Heidi does some calling out and research when a need is presented. We look for resources in the community and the church network. Um, but she's also answering tons and tons of calls a day. So her bandwidth for that is limited. I do a little bit of that work, but really we could use with several other volunteers who are coordinating with us to do this work. And it's something you can do totally in the comfort of your own home. Um, so if that's something that's of interest to you, we'd encourage you to signal so by signing up and logging in on that. Also, on the other side of things, there's a communications piece, and like when we've cultivated this information and these points of contact in the community, both with people in need and other agencies and churches and so forth, there's a big communications gap, and drawing that information together in a way that's going to be accessible and usable by a broad audience is something else we're interested in doing. And here you go. There's join our COVID-19 communications team. Help us solve problems on that side of the equation. So we're looking at really expanding our volunteer base. Hopefully the software that we've got will help us do that, and also help others who want to partner and use this software base with us. But it's a big need that we're all facing together as a community. We want to see people using it either through Love Inc. or through your church, through other agencies that you're involved with. We encourage you to get involved. Don't just sit on the couch. Get to work and let's get through this together. Heidi, before we close, would you mind just saying a prayer for us and lifting up these needs that we've identified?
Yes, I will. Dear Lord, I just want to thank you, first of all, for today and the chance to communicate with the community and have the option of different forms of media and communication to reach out to Whatcom County. And Lord, I just lift up these gap needs to you. There are, of course, many more that I'm sure will come up and that we'll have to look into and research, Lord. But these are ones that have made themselves known in the last couple of weeks. And Lord, I just pray that we will be able to come up with some answers for those families in need, our neighbors, and be able to direct them to some help for these things, Lord, whether it be gas or resources for mental health and wellness, furniture, Lord, all the many food. And Lord, I just want to thank you for how well the community has been working together to restructure and navigate this whole crisis and this season. And such a great word to say season, because that means there's an end at some point, Lord, and we will just lift up everyone to you and cling to you through this season as we walk through it together.
Amen. Thank you so much, Heidi.
Thank you.